the first thing I want to cover is all these meetings. These are not just a loose association where we can just have crosstalk and discussions of any nature. So these have to be run by the standard of all meeting procedure, which is Robert's Rules of Order. And I'm sure everybody understands that, but just a quick couple little points about Robert's Rules of Order. Nobody can speak unless recognized by the chair. And tonight, unfortunately, I'm the acting chair, so I'm the king of this castle. And personal remarks are always completely out of order. It's only about the business at hand, no personal attacks or even any kind of remarks. Any member excuse me, of the board must obtain the floor by being recognized by the chair also. So a properly run meeting would mean that if I'm the chair and Craig is a board member and wants to discuss anything, then I have to recognize him before. Otherwise, it turns into chaos, and you get crosstalk, and it's very confusing. Agenda items only, and there's another subject we'll talk about later, Brown Act, and that's very important for this body. You have to adhere to the Brown Act rules, and I'll explain all that later, but agenda items are the only thing that can be taken action on when published 72 hours in advance. And as far as parliamentary procedure, there's very specific rules for that, motions and second and amended motions and so forth, and we'll cover that later, but that is something that needs to be adhered to as well. So Robert's Rules of Order, there's a lot to it, but that's really the basics, is that there has to be some decorum and procedure. And also, the objectives for this meeting clearly are to seat the board members. Once the board members are seated, then we have to elect officers and then review again some parliamentary procedures, Brown Act stuff. And then we also have to set a regular day of the month, time and location for these meetings. You're supposed to meet every month, and it should be the same day, time, and location. They can be moved occasionally, and also time and day can be changed, but there has to be lots of notice for that. So that's another thing we need to do tonight. As a note to that, the library has been graciously granted this room the second Thursday of every month from 5 to 7. So that I'm just throwing it out there. If that works for the board, which I'm not a voting member, so when the board takes that up, that's something to consider. Just kind of a recap for the last steering committee meeting. The final approval of the bylaws was voted and approved. And also at that meeting was distributed the board membership qualifications, submission deadline, and applications were handed out at that meeting. So as a result of that, I received 12 applications, and of those 12 applications, I had to thoroughly vet each one to meet the qualifications set forth by what the steering committee voted on as statement of qualifications and also the bylaws. And of those 12 applications, only 9 actually qualified, and for various reasons. And I won't go into it tonight, during the meeting, but afterward, anybody who wants to discuss that, I'd be more than happy to. And to seat the board, we need 11. And of that composition, there has to be 6 owners of record of real property. 1 permanent seat is Long Beach Transit, 2 business owners, and 2 at-large, which can be any combination of that. So normally, we would have an election of board members, but because there needs to be 11, and we only received 9 that qualified, those members are automatically seated. There's no requirement for an election. And I hope that makes sense. Yeah. That's all legal stuff, and the city attorney agreed that's how it works. Of that, now, I think what we can go to, just quickly, are there any questions about any of that stuff that I covered? Very good. That pretty much concludes my staff report. There's other stuff we'll talk about. Well, one other thing too, just as a note, any board member is required by the city to fill out and submit a Form 700, which is a conflict of interest form. And they're also required to take ethics training, which can be online. It's pretty simple, but you still have to take it, and an oath. So this is all business improvement districts are in the state of California are created and regulated by California state law, and we also have city ordinances that adhere to this. So again, this is kind of serious stuff here, and there's some rules that have to be followed. So board members, it's a big responsibility, and it's not a paid position, so a little respect for these people who spend time doing this. It's much appreciated. And hopefully everything goes well. Just as a note, to date, assessment revenue received is about $40,000. And that money stays with the city until this board is fully seated, and then we have to also contract with the city of Long Beach in order to have that revenue distributed. So you can see it's pretty important to get this thing done. So with that, as I mentioned, the people whose applications were qualified, I'm going to call your names out, and if you want to come up here and join me, that would be wonderful. This is just in alphabetical order. Passan Chanu, if that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, correct.
Sopan, I think it is.
Sapan.
Sapan? Sorry about that. I don't speak Khmer. I apologize. I should learn it though. Peter Kong. Is Peter here?
Yeah.
Come on up, Peter. And then I received a letter of proxy from Kenneth McDonald, who is the CEO of the Long Beach Transit, so that Deborah Johnson is going to be voting in proxy for him. Laura McMillan. Is Laura here? Oh, there he is. I'm going to butcher this. Manoram Neth. Lisa Patton, property owner. Gary Ung. And Danny Vaughn. Very good. Those are the 9. We still need 2 more property owners, but I didn't get any qualified applicants. Again, I'll be happy to address that after, but we need 2 more qualified. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to know what you take to be qualified as a property owner and a business owner. I've been here longer than just about any other business.
Right. I addressed the assemblage here that I'd be happy to answer that after, but I have all the applications here, and I vetted each one based on what they applied for.
Well, apparently you need one more.
I'm sorry, sir. There's no crosstalk. We'll be happy to talk afterward, okay? Thank you. So this is your board, and their terms, I don't remember exactly, the bylaws stipulate how long each term is, but I think it's a year renewable, and then if there's a gap, another term can be served. But initially, this is going to be the board minus, yes, sorry, Deborah. Sorry, Deborah, it's going to be, yes.
According to the bylaw, half the board, so 1/3, the other half is 2/3.
Okay.
So we have to determine who's going to be 1 year and who's going to be 2 years.
Well, that's up to the board,
Okay.
right? I can't make the decisions here. Craig? Okay, good.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is it valid if I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Should
Yes, I
be taken into
recognize you. Yes, sir.
consideration? I'd like to know all the board that elect here, how many property owner, how many business owner, and how many is at large?
There are 1, 2, 3. First rule, no cell phones. There are 4 property owners, 1 Long Beach Transit, 2 business, and 2 at large.
Who are they, please?
I'll discuss that with you later.
Okay.
But this is the board for now. We have to get this stuff out of the way. There's much more to happen tonight, but I'd be more than happy to answer questions afterward, okay? So this is your board. Next on the agenda is an election of president or chair, whichever you prefer. And that's up to you to decide whether it's going to be a president or chair. I prefer chair and vice chair. Seems to be kind of consistent, but whatever works for you. So, with that said, yes, sir?
What's the difference?
No difference. Craig is president. But then I think, Craig, do you have for your board a chair or? Yeah, chair.
Yep.
Yeah, for boards, typically, I think of them as chairs. That's what all my other bids are, chair. But it's up to you. In the bylaws, it literally says president or chair. So, but with that, then I would go ahead and open up nominations for chair of the Midtown Property and Business Owners Association. It's up to the board. Pass it.
I would like to nominate Ken McDonald from East
Chair.
Transit.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Who's seconding it?
I second it.
Oh,
Okay.
she said
Laura
it.
McMillan seconds it.
I'm sorry, your first name is?
Passin, P-A-S-I-N, C-H-A-N.
Thank you.
We have a motion by Hassan and a second by Laura. And I'll go ahead and take votes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No abstention? Very good. Motion passes. Then Ken McDonald will be the chair, initial term. Now we open up elections for the vice chair. This is being, I'm doing this because it seems like by default I have to do this. But at some point, we back out and it's run by you. So you have to take charge. And the initial term is only 1 year. So that's really important. We need participation here. Unless there's another nomination.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Wong Danny.
Danny, you accept?
Yes.
Okay, good. I have a motion by Peter Kong, and you would second it? Mono seconds. Any TH last name? Members, cast your vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No abstention. Okay, we have a chair and a vice chair. You have to wear a crown too, so, no? Bad idea. Okay. Now we have election of secretary, and secretary duties are obviously administrative stuff, taking minutes and so forth. So I need a nomination for the secretary. I nominate her.
Oh, I'm not on your board.
Well, she's just graciously helping out here.
I'd like to nominate Peter Kong.
Peter. You take it. Okay, all right. Okay, have a nomination. Okay. So you
I
got
don't like
that.
to go around all night.
Danny Vaughn, you nominated, correct?
Right.
Okay, and Mono, you second. And then, ready to cast your votes, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't think so. No abstention, okay, very good. Now, a really important position is that of treasurer, and you said you're a finance person?
I nominate Lisa Patton.
Okay.
I second that.
Okay. So, proxy vote was Desmond Johnson, nominate. Laura, second.
Rick?
All right, cast your vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? We're good. Okay, very good. Well, that's your board, and unless the chair would like to take over, I'll continue. The chair's not here, so Deborah, unless you want to take over.
I'm amenable to it, if it's your preference to continue.
I'll keep going.
Okay.
So we'll put you in the hot seat.
No worries.
Okay, very good. The next is we need a recommendation to set a regular meeting day of the month, time, and location. And for those who may have just arrived, I mentioned that the library was gracious enough to allow this meeting to take place here the second Thursday of every month from 5 to 7 p.m. So if that sounds like it's something that works with your schedules, I would like to now open up for discussion. Any board members, any thoughts on this?
It works for me.
Yeah, it works for me. So second Thursday of every month.
Second Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. Yeah, and I'd like to add that this is, 1 second please, this is ADA compliant, there's plenty of parking, it's accessible, it's in the neighborhood, so it seems like there's a lot of plus to holding the meetings here. Danny?
Yes, I'd like to propose the third Thursday of the month. Good.
Third Thursday? It's not available. They have some kids thing every third Thursday. We were actually hoping that would work, because it works for a lot of people, but I apologize, this is not, so, darn. That works for you guys too, right? Yes. Okay, very good. If there's no further discussion, is there any public comment there? Okay, seeing none, do I get a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Okay, passing to second. Then cast your votes, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstention? All right, then this meeting will always take place the second Thursday of every month from 5 to 7 p.m. That's established. Yay. Upcoming agenda items. This is something I wanted to cover. There's a lot more that has to be done still. We have a board seated, and as a note, I mentioned earlier that to date, we've collected about $40,000 in assessments. The total assessment is around 160, so we still got a ways to go. There are some big players that haven't put their money in yet, but that'll happen. That money cannot be distributed to the association until the board is seated and it's a legitimate going concern. And then I have to take this to council to vote on a contract with the city, with this association. To date, you have your articles of incorporation and state tax exempt status, but you do not have your federal tax exempt status. So that stuff needs to be done, and that's why there has to be a board to get that stuff done. Again, I can't do this. The other thing that you need to do is you have to select a bank. So the board needs to come up with a bank that they're going to work with and a signatory, that whole process. And also there needs to be, in the bylaws and the budget, there's allowed for a paid staff, an executive director. Because, I don't know if you noticed, but not many people were super excited about becoming an officer of this board. And there is work to be done. So for the next meeting, it's important to somehow come up with a search, and I'm hoping maybe if things work out, Craig is really experienced in this area. We need to come up with some parameters and scope and so forth to hire an executive director. Just like Bixby Knolls, Belmont Shore, downtown has quite a bit of staff. There's a lot to be done here, and these volunteer members can't do it all. So that's another item that has to be for an upcoming agenda, which hopefully will be maybe next month. And that's really about it for the agenda. At this point, I'd like to open it up for public participation, and we're pretty much ahead of schedule here. So typically, we allow 3 minutes per discussion, and it's only stuff related to the jurisdiction of this particular board. And again, to cover the Robert's Rules of Order, no personal attacks, no crosstalk, and typically public participation in most meetings is just a public comment and then no comment from the board after that. Not every meeting is that way, and sometimes it's informal and we can. Carissa?
Can I ask that people state their names so that I can?
Absolutely, yes, yeah, that's really important too, to have your name on record. So at this point, I'd like to open up for public participation if anybody has anything related to this particular board. Now's a good time. Sir?
I still would like to know.
I'm sorry, could you state your name?
My name is Charles Song,
Charles Song.
and I still like to know how you go about to select this committee. And I also like to know how many property owners on this board right now, how many at large, how many business owners by name.
Okay. I covered that already, but I'll do it again. Hold on 1 second here. The property owners are representing is, I apologize, Supan?
I represent Makappa Jewelry as
Yes.
an agent.
Right. And that was, I spoke with the property owner, and he is a qualified, legitimate representative. Peter Kong is the property owner. Danny Vong, I don't know if that's, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Danny Wong, right?
Wong,
correct,
sorry.
correct.
Danny Wong is the property owner. And Lisa Patton is representing the city as a property owner. And then Ken McDonald is the CEO of Long Beach Transit, which is a permanent seat. Gary Ung is a business owner, insurance. Laura McMillan is a business owner as well. Passin is a member of a legitimate, qualified nonprofit, as well as Mono Neth. Those both are members of organizations that have full IRS status. There are some who submitted applications whose organization is nowhere to be found, either revoked IRS status or the name couldn't be found in any kind of legitimate search. So they were disqualified, unfortunately. Another stipulation for board membership was that the applicant to have attended the meetings, the steering committee meetings, or meetings that took place, and there were some who had not attended any meetings, and also in the qualifications that were approved by the steering committee was a requirement that they be in support of establishment of this bid. So that's the initial qualifications, and I have that here if anybody wants it. And if somebody didn't meet those qualifications, and I had to fully vet all 12, and this is what is representative of who qualified. Yes, sir.
I'm Anthony Kim,
Yes, sir.
business owner in the Quebec corridor. I want to know how many business owners submitted applications for the positions.
Just
First
business
question.
owners?
Right.
The category is business owner / at large, and there were 9 of those. Now, some of those were also property owners. And in property ownership, there were 7 specific property owners.
So there were 7 property owners applied for the business owner positions.
No, it depended on the application. Some circled just business, some circled just property, and some circled all 3. So it's dependent on what they applied for.
But my question is, how many applicants applied under the business owner for the board?
That's what I'm telling you. Business, it could have been business and property, but business was 9 and property was 7.
And you mentioned that you select the people serving the business owner based on their attendance?
Well,
The
one of the
same thing?
requirements in the qualifications, which I'll be happy to hand out to you, which was handed out at the last meeting, was that they had to have attended meetings. And if they attended no meetings, then according to the steering committee, not me, that disqualified them if they did not attend any meetings. If there's supposed to be 11-member board,
Right,
we didn't receive 11 qualified applications.
I see.
Only 9 were qualified, therefore, by default, those 9 are board members.
I see. So that was not explained at our steering committee at all.
Well, that's standard procedure. That's cleared through the city attorney's office. And it's just standard procedure anyway, for all boards like this.
Okay. I will discuss with you with my positions
Sure.
on it.
Absolutely, be more than
Thank
happy
you.
to. You bet. Any other questions? Well, if that's it, I think the board needs to take up something. This is the November meeting, and the next meeting will be, what is the 3rd Thursday of December?
Second.
I'm sorry. Sorry. We wanted
It's
to,
December 10th.
December 10th.
That's correct.
And for the board, is that still good with you? To meet on December 10th? It's important, so, if that's the case, then the next meeting will be December 10th, 5 to 7 p.m., same location. That sound good? Any comments from the board? Questions? No?
Okay, so you said that we need to get a bank,
Correct.
right? We probably need to get an office. Is that something that we could do that tonight?
It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
And typically, and that's something I absolutely forgot, we need to discuss Brown Act stuff for the board, which is super important. Does everybody know what the Brown Act is? We've heard of that. It's, all it is really about transparency and no illegal forming committees and so forth. But it's pretty simple. This meeting has to be notified, or noticed rather, 72 hours minimum prior to the meeting. And the notice has to be at the meeting site and then somewhere else. If you can put it in the press, that's good. Sometimes that's a bit of a chore to do. But it's important to notice. I don't know if you saw, but I put the notice out here last week for this meeting, and also at City Hall, there's a kiosk, put it out there as well. The public input can be on anything on the agenda, and each agenda item can get public input. But again, public input for the public participation portion of the meeting has to be just on stuff in the jurisdiction of this particular board. Probably most importantly for the board is that you cannot discuss business of the board with a majority of the board either jointly or serially unless it's at a noticed public hearing. Meaning that this board currently has 9 members. So quorum or a majority obviously would be 5. So if you get 5 of you together, if you talk anything other than baseball, then it's illegal. You can't talk about anything, I'm just kidding about baseball, you can talk about anything you want, but you cannot talk anything about whatever's related to this jurisdiction of this board. That's a violation of the Brown Act. And they mean if you're in one gathering, or if Passin talks to Gary, who then talks to Mano or Lisa, that's serially. So you can't do that either. It's super important. You cannot violate the Brown Act. That will jeopardize this whole board. Craig, what other parts of the Brown Act are super important for you guys?
That's pretty much about it.
Yeah.
Those are the key figures.
There's a whole lot, and I have stuff here that anybody can take. I brought Brown Act for you guys, Robert's Rules of Order, and this is really simplified. It's super thick, all of the rules and regulations. So, yes, sir.
Steve Main. Kim, a couple of things I want to ask.
Steve Main, MUNG.
I want to get the bylaw, the mission and vision of this particular agency. Secondly, the meeting is open to the public.
Yes.
Anybody can participate and join.
Oh, yes. Yeah, all these meetings are fully public, and that's a big part of the Brown Act, is that nothing happens behind closed doors here. And just to kind of bring up something that I've heard some people may be concerned about, the money that is collected from the assessment here, there are very specific qualified uses for that money. It's based on California state law. This money can't just be spent on whatever the board decides on. There are very specific programs and services, and the management plan dictates what that is. And there's a lot of oversight too. This board has to give me quarterly reports and then an annual report. And there's a lot of oversight here. So if there's any concern about, how's this money really going to be spent? Well, it's very transparent. And we're fortunate too that the board, I think anyway, elected Ken McDonald. If you haven't met him yet, he's a tough cookie. He doesn't take any stuff. And he is highly professional. He runs a giant organization over there. So I think we're pretty fortunate to get this thing established, to have him as the chairperson. And he says that she's amazing. So to have financial oversight with somebody who is, I'm not sure, CFO or whatever position over there, that's huge. So if there's any concerns about, wait, how's this money being spent? I can tell you that's not a concern. There's a lot of oversight here. So I think we're in good hands. And again, the programs and services, the steering committee decide what to put into the management plan, and that's over many months, right, Mariko? So it's very clear how the money will be spent. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. Does that answer all your questions, Steve?
Well, I would like to obtain the bylaw and the office
Yeah.
services. And, yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll email you directly.
Absolutely, yeah, right. If you want, you can email me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm responsible for all 10 business improvement districts in the city. So if you have any questions that, you feel free to email me or call anytime. And if you want, I can give it to you now, if you want to write it down. And I also have cards. But I'll just tell you my email address. It's very complex. It's jim.fisk@longbeach.gov. Even I can probably remember that one, huh?
How you spell fish?
Fish? Right here, pal. Oh, yeah, you spell out dot too, D-O-T, no, just kidding. Again, it's jim.fisk@longbeach.gov. And my phone number, if you want to call, is 562-570-3863. I don't see anybody writing it down except these gentlemen, but that's good. I get too many calls anyway. So I think that's about it, unless there's something else that, Craig, you think of anything important? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jenny Warner. I'm a homeowner in the area.
Jenny what?
Wanner.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering if you can, just for the record in the minutes, read the mission statement so that we can hear it here.
No, but I have the management plan. It's very thick.
You don't have like one or two sentences?
No,
mission statement?
no. Again, I'm not sure when you came in. I'm with the city of Long Beach,
Yeah.
and I would not normally be doing this. I'm doing this under protest.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But by default, I was, made to run this meeting. This is the board.
Right.
And any mission statement stuff you can get from them. But I do have the management plan, which clearly details what, I'll say, the mission of this particular business improvement is. And I'll be happy to get that to you, but I don't have time to read that whole thing.
Okay, so my understanding then is that the mission and vision statement are yet to be created by the board.
Well, the management plan clearly says why this exists
Great.
and what programs and services that they want to put in place. But it's quite a bit. So just to brief you, business improvement districts are created, believe it or not, back in the 40s, parking was a real challenge, believe it or not. And so the state of California said, okay, we don't have money to take care of these problems, so what we'll do is we'll allow you to put in place a business improvement district where you assess yourself, and that money can be used for purposes above and beyond what that particular municipality can pay for. And so I'm not sure how many are in the state of California. Craig, do you know how many?
In the state?
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, a couple hundred.
Yeah. In the city of Long Beach, we have 10 of them. And each business improvement district has its own priorities, I'll call it, based on California state law allowed expenditure. So this one, I do know that in all the steering committee meetings, the concerns that were expressed and put in the management plan were about cleanliness and safety, certainly marketing and branding, but a big part of it was clean and safe. So I know that that's really the focus of, a big focus of this particular group. Does that help?
Yeah, my takeaway is still that it hasn't yet been written in one or two sentences, so thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if anything is one or two sentences, but again, if you want, I can get you a copy of the management plan. Be happy to. Any other questions? In that case, then, I don't know if there's nothing else to discuss, if the proxy chair would like to adjourn.
Yes, I move that we
Motion.
adjourn.
Second?
A second.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.